Open loops. Do, do. Open loops. Open loops. Open loops. Open loops. You must listen to the open loops, a theme park for absurd beliefs and systems of integration between the mind and the creative spirit. Open loops.
Today on Open Loops, we have someone I'm very excited about. He is a filmmaker, a researcher, and an author. You may know him from his books, A Walk in the Shadows and Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, though today we're going to focus on his most recent book, Travels Through Time. We have researcher Mike Ricksecker here, and also if you're familiar with that name, you may have caught him on all the paranormal and unexplained shows you can possibly imagine. I mean, Ancient Aliens, The Unexplained, tons of stuff. He's on Gaia TV. He's got podcasts, a docuseries, The Shadow Dimension. I mean, lot of fringy stuff which we love talking about here. I'm excited to delve into one of my favorite topics, time travel. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, Greg, thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. I really have as well. I mean, as soon as I saw, I don't even know what happened. Somehow we got connected through some various social media channel, and then I saw you starting to post stuff, teasing that you were working on a time travel book, teasing that you had a lot going on with it, and I said, okay, I'm going to hold on to this and see and wait until this guy is finished with this book until I have him on, because I want the time travel. I want the inside. I want to understand it. So let me go back for a second first, and let me ask you this. So many different topics. Did you? Before I go into this, I guess my question is always, because I wonder about people like me that are interested in these things. What got you into this? Did you have an experience? Were you always kind of open-minded to these things? I mean, how does Mike Ricksecker become such an established person in this particular field? I have to know.
Yeah, it really does come down to having an experience when I was a child. And this is, where the basis of A Walk in the Shadows comes from, where I had an interaction with a shadow person when I was about 8 years old. And I've had many since then, but that was probably the most harrowing, at least at that time, because I was so young and, the thing did get physical with me. And, it's, one of those where, mom and dad were telling me that I just had a bad dream, but I knew I was awake for the whole thing. And so over the years, that stuck with me. And as I continue to see more things, I wanted to learn more about this type of phenomenon. Now, when it comes to time travel, that's something I've also always had an interest in ever since I saw the movie Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. I just thought it was absolutely amazing that he was able to will his consciousness back to another point in time. So, it's just a love story, of course, but just the time travel aspect fascinated me. So over the years, as I dove into my research in the supernatural, paranormal, and what have you, I started to notice that there were a lot of elements and types of phenomena that really we could really chalk up to some sort of a time travel incident rather than a traditional ghost or apparition or what have you. And so that's really where this latest book came out of.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, I do know that, and I definitely want to get into the broader strokes of your theory about the way time works and some of the phenomenon that has come from that. But I suppose what's interesting to me is that when I went down the let me explore time travel in depth course in my life, there were two schools of thought in the alternative belief system community, I guess the spiritual or whatever we call ourselves. And there were two ways of doing it. There was one which was the actual here's a machine that if you apply the laws of physics, this is somewhere buried in Tesla's papers. You can figure out a way to make this machine that'll actually go. So it's like the actual physical time travel mechanism, which I find very interesting. And I definitely have had people on that have claimed they've experienced it or been involved with making machines or whatnot. Who knows what to believe there, but it's very interesting. And then there's the other side, which you mentioned, which is that consciousness component of it. The amount of times people say, "Oh, time travel's possible," and I'm hoping they're about to tell me about a machine, and they say, "Oh no, it was it was an out of body experience. It was an astral phenomenon. It was." So, I mean, I've never. Now, I feel like those two can cross paths, but I'm curious. I mean, for you, did you ever look into both aspects of it? Are they connected? I mean, how would you reconcile the mind versus machine paradigm of time travel?
Yeah, and that's a tricky part. When it comes to building a machine, now our theoretical physicists will say, well, yeah, we could, but it would probably take the power of the sun, meaning, all that energy to be able to make this machine to be able to do this. And, harnessing that much energy and bringing it to Earth would probably destroy the planet, unfortunately.
Right.
And yeah, and also they'll go down the route of, well, if we go to a black hole and we get close enough to it without crossing over the event horizon, sling around it, then by the time we reach Earth, time will be different. The problem with that is one, we're not getting near a black hole anytime soon because they're so far away. And two, getting that close to a black hole would pretty much destroy you. You'd go through the process of spaghettification, and I mean, that would essentially kill you and your craft. So it's really not feasible to be able to do that. So, um, that said, there do seem to be some of these different UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to call them these days, that appear to possibly be time travelers from some other point in time in Earth's history. So it is possible to be able to do this through a machine. I think a more practical application, though, would actually be using the consciousness to move in and out of different moments in time.
Oh man! First of all, I love the word spaghettification. I hope you came up with that. I mean, I'll give this guy credit for being an author right there.
Oh, I didn't invent that one. No, that's an actual scientific term.
Oh my gosh, what?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean that's super interesting. I don't even, all I could think of was this plot of this last Indiana Jones flick, which I hated.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh, you didn't like that, huh?
well, I will say, I mean, oh gosh, I guess I did like. I mean, I just love the franchise in general, but I definitely I didn't want time travel is tricky when they bring it into films, and it
It
wasn't the
is.
time travel ending I would have wanted necessarily, but it did make me think. I mean, when you're talking about well, let me ask you this: is there any? I know that that wasn't a real. It was a variation of a time device, and it's not actually
Right.
Archimedes that was looking into that and whatnot. But in your history of looking through ancient symbolism and alchemy and all this stuff, do you believe there were people looking for fissures in time? And if not, what were they looking for?
Yeah, actually, I do, and I think they knew of, as you said, fissures in time, and I think they had an understanding, a better understanding than we do of how the universe actually works and how how time is really layered. And you look back into the ancient Egyptian burial text, what we call the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really the Book of Going Forth by Day, but Book of the Dead sounds a lot cooler.
Right.
Yeah. And you look specifically at the Papyrus of Ani. Now, the Book of the Dead, there's not like one specific book. They are a series of spells. Some burials have a couple of the spells, others have more. They might be written on a sarcophagus, papyrus, what have you. The Papyrus of Ani is, really the largest and most beautiful and ornate. It's amazing. And within that, you have Ani, who was a royal scribe back in the day. He's already dead in the narrative, and he's there with his wife Tutu. He's going through what we would call the afterlife, the duat. And he has a conversation with Atum, which was he was the god that created the universe. The Egyptians referred to them as netters, which is really more like a natural force rather than what we would deem a personage of a god. But as he's having this conversation with Atum, what's interesting is he asks, what would be the span of my life? And which is kind of fascinating because he's already dead, but he's asking what the span of his life is going to be. And Atom says it will be for millions on millions of years upon millions of years. So he's layering time in this fashion, and then continues on talking about the earth returning to the primordial waters. So you have this idea of recycle and renewal, which he continues on even more. Atom does, saying that he himself will turn into a serpent. Now that sounds kind of magical and a little far out there to our ears, but it's basically he's describing the symbolism of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, which is a symbol of recycle and renewal in the ancient world. It's really our first alchemical symbol. And so this is, not just, we see it used in a lot of different ways. First, the renewal of the king. We'll see this on like the burial shrine of King Tut. We'll see it in some of the different tombs in the Valley of the Kings. So of course, they want their kings to come back, to be renewed. But we also see it as a symbolism of the renewal of life energy and also of the universe. So in this sense, the ancients knew that there were these very, very large cycles of the universe that things die and decay, they come back and form new life. And the same thing, not only true here on Earth, but also throughout the universe. And then the layering of time that he described at the beginning there is really in part what I've incorporated into what I call stacked time theory, which I'm sure you're probably going to want to ask a question or two about that.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to know about that. I mean, that is okay. So before you get into this theory, I mean, where do the is that? I mean, the Egyptian thing is fantastic. Are there other factors that went into your theorizing about this? I mean, I imagine you pulled from many different sources. I know your book mentions, referencing Einstein and Tesla and stuff like that. But I'm curious, kind of always curious about the formulation of when people have broad theories that make the universe make sense. Yeah, how do you get there?
Yeah, it's been a long journey to get there. I mean, the idea of this really it came into my head about 20 years ago. As I was contemplating some of these different experiences that we have, and so I couldn't even tell you the exact moment, but as I was contemplating all these different things, it just really occurred to me that wait a minute, what if all time, past, present, and future, we're all concurrent. Everything that has happened is happening and will happen. They're all right there. And I took that, started doing some research. Found out different ancient cultures believe the same thing, like the Australian Aboriginal religion has been teaching that for 60,000 plus years.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they call it the dream time, and that religion is one of the oldest in the world. We say, well, 60,000, but that's the earliest we can find it, but it probably goes back even further because somebody had to start coming up with these ideas before they started being written down, and the handing down through oral tradition and that sort of thing. Um, and then, of course, I came across Einstein, where he had these ideas as well in his concepts of the space-time continuum and what he called the block universe, where everything, the universe is one whole. All the information is there from day one until the final day. Everything is there. And so I took that a little bit further with the stacked time, in that each of those moments, again, that has happened, is happening, and will happen. Just take where you're sitting right now, and they're all stacked on top of each other, each moment like a photograph. And sometimes what'll happen is that two of those moments, because everything is resonance, frequency, vibration. Two of those moments will resonate at the same frequency for just a moment, and we'll get a glimpse of something, another point in time. Some people may call it an apparition, a ghost, some sort of haunting. And I do believe there are, human spirits that are still lingering about today and those sorts of things. But I think some of these occasions are actually what we would call a time slip, where we're getting a glimpse of another moment in time. And not only do we get a glimpse of that other moment, but they're getting a glimpse of us. And you see some of these stories, and find some of these different accounts of somebody claiming to see an apparition or a ghost, but that apparition or ghost turned and looked at them as if they were the ghost. That's really what you would call a time slip.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna have to. I want to make sense of this, because I'm doing the visualizing of the photographs in my head, and I'm putting it against, at the very least, trying to understand it fresh, but also trying to make sense of it in light of perhaps, I don't know, string theory, these other things which, oh, so no, I've had people on the show that are like, string theory, that is so hypothetical. That isn't even, we've disproved that at this point. But I am curious, I mean, does this align with any of the modern physics understandings about, I feel like every couple of years, Mike, I hear a new trend or something in theoretical physics about
Right.
the way they think time works, and now we believe in retrocausation. It is possible. I mean, how do you align with those things, or go against them?
Yeah, it's a mix, because you're right. There's always new information that's coming out. So how do all these pieces fit together? And yeah, I'm not a physicist, but what I essentially do with my writing and my research is I try to find the connections. How do all of these things fit together? And so there's a interesting study that came out here within the last few years from down in Antarctica, where they were doing a study on neutrinos. And actually, it was with the NETA project and the Ice Cube project. The Ice Cube project actually just within the last few days released their mapping of the galaxy based off of neutrinos, which is really fascinating. And the neutrinos are supposed to be coming in from space, and they record those, and they find out all kinds of different cosmic information. However, when they were doing these studies a few years ago, they were actually detecting neutrinos operating very, very strangely, where instead of from space, they were detecting some that were coming up out of the Earth, from the Earth's core, working uh, essentially backwards from the way they're supposed to. And a paper that was released about a year and a half ago by these scientists doing this study, and this was in the Journal of Applied Physics, their summation was that they believed that this was indicative of a parallel universe running in reverse time. So, of course, I had to
What?
take that and run with it, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does
Yeah.
that even
So,
mean? What does that even mean? That's wild. I love that.
exactly, exactly. And so I found that absolutely fascinating. But it's like, okay, so how does that work within what I've been talking about for years on stacked time theory? Yes, I just published a book on it, but I've been and like my podcasts and YouTube channel, all that sort of thing. I've been talking about this for several years now. So how does that fit into it? And I think it comes back to, again, that symbol of the Ouroboros that we were talking about before, where you look at several different representations of, especially the one from the 1400s by Theodorus Pelecanos, which was actually a copy that he had made from an older alchemical tract that came from around, it was about 1,000 years old, came from around 400 AD. That was uh, written by Synesius, who's one of the oldest alchemists of that era, that particular era in any case. But in that illustration, and there's a lot of different alchemical symbolism, but you have, of course, the snake eating its own tail, but then you have the two different tracks of color, the red and the green, which, essentially it's symbolizing the dualistic nature of our universe, duality. So, you think as above, so below, the yin, the yang, all that sort of thing. But with this symbol, remember, it's constant recycle renewal. So you think of it as a circle kind of spinning around. Well, if you have the two different tracks that are there, then you would have one running in one direction, say the red running clockwise, and then the green, say, is running counterclockwise. So there's your two different universes running in different directions. And essentially that tells us that the end of one is the beginning of the other, and the beginning of the other is the end of the other. So we're essentially getting alpha and omega, the beginning and the end, in the same spot, which is what I believe the symbolism of the snake eating its own tail are those two universes coming together. One's ending and the other is beginning. And that's essentially the Big Bang.
Oh, so okay, that is, I mean, wow, 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 wow. That's an amazing base of the puzzle you've put together there. I'm now, I mean, I imagine that then that means we must be. Is this where aliens come in, where there's or crossover between one go like weird things that we see come from the end of the other, and things that just don't make sense come from the fact that there's something going in reverse. That's a bizarro version of this. I mean, how does or how does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. What is that universe running in reverse time? And oh, by the way, let's not be so arrogant. We could be the ones running in reverse. Um,
True, true.
yeah. So yeah, we could be very well getting glimpses of this other universe running in reverse time. That could be depending on where they are on their timeline, because we don't know exactly how long the universe is going to last. So, some of these extraterrestrial races that we're seeing could be from, if we're early in our universe and they're later in theirs at this point, we could be seeing them crossing over as some of these different extraterrestrials. That's certainly the case. I had one gentleman, Tom, who's a longtime member of my Connected Universe portal learning platform, and we do the Connecting Universe online classes, ask me, and I include this at the very, very end of the book, where he was asking about the end times with the dead rising from the grave. And it just kind of occurred to me when he asked that question, sometimes you could just got to go with your intuition. It's like, wait a second here. At the end times, dead rising from the grave. If you look at that symbolism of the snake eating its own tail, there is an overlap there where the tail is inside the mouth. And so with that overlap is, are the two universes at that moment basically blending into each other? And so to us, it would seem like dead are rising from the grave, because all of a sudden you have this overlap of the two universes like that. So we could be talking about a lot of different things here, things that are what you call an ultra terrestrial thing, something that's indigenous here to planet Earth that we are seeing, or certainly extraterrestrials. And like I said early on in this, some of these uh, time travelers, or some of these UAPs and UFOs that we're seeing, could actually be time travelers here from Earth. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that they're human, because they could be extraterrestrial time travelers that have colonized Earth long into the future and are traveling back in time, and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna zoom out for a second and just point out here, and this has certainly been, I mean, Mike, as I, I'm not sure I intended this podcast to just be delving into these kind of topics, though seems to be where I've landed. I'm
Right.
continually fascinated by how extensive the knowledge of the nature of reality was discussed in ancient cultures. I mean, who came up with this psyop, this propaganda that, oh, it was a primitive understand. Yeah, they didn't have the science, so they just made up symbolism. But I mean, you're telling me based on all these stories, I mean, sure, I know there's some extraction. I know there's some looking at the symbolism and whatnot, but it sounds to me like, and I know, and I'm curious, you can definitely, I think, speak to this given your studying of these ancient civilizations. For some reason, these people were tapped into a really complex understanding of the nature and time of consciousness that again, it just feels like if you actually sit down and take the time to look at what they're doing or what they wrote down, we're trying to understand. We're trying to catch up. So I welcome your thoughts on that. But then again, I also, as I said that, I'm going, is that part of the cyclical nature here? Is that the very fact that we're rediscovering it? Does that fit into the time stack theory as well? I know those are two
Right.
separate points, but yeah, if you could speak to the first one about how complex these ideas are, I would love to hear your take.
Absolutely. Yeah, they are complex, but they had that knowledge. And I think where traditional archaeology gets hung up on is when people in our field that are diving into these topics use the term high technology. That the ancient colors had the ancient cultures had high advanced technology, and immediately because of our uh, current day context of what high technology is, the mind immediately goes to, well, the ancients didn't have computers. We've never found an ancient cell phone sitting around, and things like that. It's like, oh, wait a second. They had a high advanced technology, but it's not necessarily the technology that we have today. We see just in their architecture that they had very very advanced building skills that we do not have today. Some of these blocks that they were able to pick up and move around at will. Our largest cranes that we have in the world today cannot lift them. It's absolutely amazing some of the things they were able to do. So that was certainly a high advanced technology. So it's just different. And when those civilizations met their end, whether that was a global cataclysm or what have you, the people that were left and survived, you know, that's basically the mentality that they ended up with. They had to survive for a time based on whatever in the world happened to them, and you're not going to keep doing the more high tech things when you're just surviving. You just need the basics. Just take right now, if we were to meet with like an EMP, or maybe a comet hit the Earth and we were suddenly thrust back into the dark ages, right? Well, our civilization right now is going to attempt to survive. We're not going to have the computers and the cell phones there for a time. And, it will take several generations to try to get back up to speed, rebuild infrastructure and that sort of thing. And the people that had the knowledge of, how to build a computer, how to code it, all those sorts of things, eventually will, die off. Maybe they didn't even survive because they didn't know how to, forage for food or hunt or anything. And so they may have even just, died. At that point, civilization will have to take a new turn and go in a different direction. That's essentially what happened with the ancients. Once those people that had the sophisticated building knowledge and had the knowledge behind how the stone circles worked and all of those sorts of things, civilization rebuilt from basically a different seed.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah. And I imagine that well, I- I- hmm. I mean, I'm really thinking back to this Indiana Jones movie now, where Archimedes, we came to them as well as we discovered them coming to us. I mean, this is okay. You know what? I do want to know what is there a historical example? Are there things out there where you're going, yeah, this could definitely be a story of somebody from the future having crossed over to the past.
Well, yeah, any of these ancient accounts. I've been on the show Ancient Aliens a few times here. A lot of those, a lot of the points that they make with here's an example of, let's just say we'll take Chaco Canyon here for instance, right there by Pueblo Bonito. You have the petroglyphs there that talk about the star people,
Mm.
and you have the spiral pattern there, which the indigenous people specifically say those are representative portals, and the star people came here through the portals and gave us knowledge. So that portal could be, it could be a stargate. They could be coming here from some other place in the cosmos. It could be some sort of time travel event where they traveled here from the future, came into that day and age and passed on some knowledge to the people. So we definitely see a lot of that in ancient symbolism.
Yeah. What about when you say, and this is, I mean, I don't know how much you'll be able to explain around this, but when you say that there's certain times where the photos, if you will, resonate with each other. What is in your in your understanding? Why do certain moments resonate? What is causing the resonating? Why does that even happen?
Yeah, that's the question is, what is the catalyst? If we knew what exactly the catalyst was, then we would be making this stuff happen at will. And but I think that's the key is trying to understand how do you get these different frequencies to line up. Um, and I think it has a lot to do with again the consciousness and also meditation. Let me give an example here. So the famous poet Goethe, a famous German poet. He talks about this in his work Dichtung und Wahrheit, which means translation is poetry and truth. But it's one of his great written works. He was on the road to Rosenheim one day, and he was having an affair with a young woman out there. He's walking down the road, and he's lost in his thoughts. Kind of like today, where we're driving down the road, and we kind of zone out and miss our turn. This is actually a type of meditative state, getting lost in your thoughts or zoning out like that. And so, as he's walking down this road, all of a sudden he notices on the other side there is uh, this man in this gold trimmed gray suit. He was quite noticeable. And as he turned to get a better look at him, all of a sudden the guy disappeared, just completely vanished. Of course, took kind of astonished Goethe. Of course, he noted that. But the guy disappeared, so he ended up going on his way. A couple years later, he's walking down the same road, but in the opposite direction. Gets to about that point where he'd seen the man and looks down at himself and is like, oh my gosh, I was the man in the gold trimmed gray suit because there he was wearing it at that moment. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. If so, a lot of people call it a doppelganger event. If you Google doppelganger stories, you'll find that one. But I don't really think it's a doppelganger, which is double walker, evil twin sort of thing. This was actually himself. He had gotten a glimpse of himself at another point in time, and I think what had happened was he, like I said, he was lost in his thought. He was in a meditative state. And I think what happened was when he got to that point in the road, he was in a meditative state enough where his energy from that moment in that particular day and year basically tuned into himself on that road at another point in time. And it just really clicked. They tuned into each other. He was able to see it for a moment. And when he decided to focus a little bit more on that moment, kind of broke the meditative state because, like, oh, well, there's this other guy here in this suit, and it broke that meditative state, and he lost it there. But yeah, I think it will have to do more with really learning how to meditate and tune into these moments better.
Yeah, yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, to me, that is an even higher form of wisdom and understanding. I mean, look, we have these people out there that claim that they are tapped into the Akashic records. Okay, a version of this in a way, or just remote viewers, stuff like this, and then you have people that just Nostradamus claims they can see the future, make predictions, stuff like this. But it's interesting to me that I don't. I guess it's rare. I do hear stories about this, so I won't completely dismiss it. But this notion of being able to close your eyes and visualize the future and what you want your future to be, and then having a future that is exactly that. I mean, that's not, unfortunately, that's just not entirely the human experience. Now, there are some people out there that have this ability, and you'll talk to them and they'll say, yeah, I remember being a little kid, I visualized being a rock star, I saw what was going to happen, this is exactly what I saw. But to get every single step, to know every single moment, to move through the stacks of time and see first of all, I don't think you'd want that. And I know there's short stories about this that talk about why that would be a bad idea. But it's curious to me that I guess I'm wondering why certain moments, is there a correlation frequency wise with these bigger, meaningful moments in your life versus, the minor steps you need to get there. I mean, it does explain a lot of the concepts, or at least align with the concepts of manifestation and whatnot. But yeah, I guess in your studies, why do you think humans aren't able, or may never be able to get to, having a perfect future photographic memory?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of times, even though we're trying to manifest this, that, or the other thing, I mean, there's always self doubt that creeps in. There's a difference between wanting something and knowing that you have it before you actually get it. Greg
Hmm.
Braden does a really good job of breaking this down, and he gives several different examples of where, instead of manifesting by saying, I want this, I want that in my life, the tactic you should be taking is, I have this, I have that. Even if you don't actually physically have it at that moment, that you have it, and therefore you will get it. Um, yeah, in one of his talks, he has a great example of, he's I guess it was a dry spell. They were in a drought, whatever area this was at in the American Southwest, and he went up to some sacred circle with a indigenous tribe member, and they visit the circle, and Craig was expecting this guy to do some great ceremony or whatever, and he was like, "No, we're done. Let's go." And Greg was like, "Well, are we going to do something or whatever?" He's like, "No, we've been here, and the rain will come." He's like, "Well, what do you mean it will come?" He's like, "Well, I know it's coming," and he basically said that he put out the intention that basically the rain is here, so therefore it will come. And I guess it ended up pouring rain for like days on end. Some sort of flood happened or whatever. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, so it's a little bit of a different. And it's just very really subtle. The idea of I will have this, or I have it now, and then therefore you will get it. So
And
that
oh no,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
sorry. I was gonna say. I mean, it speaks to another interesting tension in ancient ideas about there is no time, live in the present, versus yeah, but we also have this like really complicated understanding of the way time works. So I find that kind of, I mean, in general, I think as I explore more and more of these things, I'm going, oh, it's not that it's one or the other. It's that both exist at the same time that makes this universe so freaky. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
like I was saying earlier, all the information's there. It is all there, and it's just matter of being able to access it. Now, you'd mentioned, like Akashic records and things like that before. And I do mention the Akashic records in the book. I have Emily Harrison from the Akashic Academy come in and kind of opine about that. But I precede that talking about the collective unconscious, which was the Jungian idea, Carl Jung, his ideas on basically eternal knowledge. And it's very, very similar to the ideas of the Akashic records, that, all the information of the universe is already existent, everything from the past, present, and from the future. And I've always found it interesting over the centuries that all of a sudden you'll find like 5 or 6 different guys all suddenly trying to invent the same thing, even though they had like no contact with each other. Absolutely bizarre, but they were all basically tapping into that knowledge that is out there. And there's different ways to do that, whether it's through meditation. You might be able to access it while you're sleeping, because your mind enters into different brainwave states. This is where we'll get like glimpses of the future, and people have premonitory dreams and things like that. But if we take that, the universe is whole, all time is there. And we even look at ideas like, the simulated universe. Okay. If it is a simulation, and I do believe it is, not necessarily computer simulation, but something that's more organic and biological in nature, the technology we don't quite understand, but we could use concepts of computing with it, like take a program. The program that we're using right now to do this broadcast. You could take a video game, whatever. When you enter into that, all the information is there. Now, you might have to, if it's a game, play it linearly, from one level to the next. But all the information of the game is there. And you might be able to find a back door or a hack or something. Or if you're a programmer, then you'd be able to get into any level within that program that you want. And I think that is what's happening here with some of these different time slips. When we have premonitory dreams, we have a deja vu moment. We have temporarily had a quick little piece of access to one of these other places within the simulation.
Yes, yes, and I love you talking about this simulation thing as well, a lot, because again, it's the same exact paradox. I think that the human project, I mean, it reminds me of one of my favorite books ever is the book, or the Alan Watts's book, Against the Taboo of Knowing Who You Are. And he talks about the idea of they're the kind of free flowing view of the world, and then there's the rigid view, and it's most humans either go to this like airy fairy kind of, oh, everything's we're all one collective, blah 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 blah, or it's all numbers and facts. And he's going, look, it's both, it's both at the same time. And I think that is what happens with the simulation often. I think it's a cool thing to talk about. And it's funny, I think it's one of those topics that gets as much attention from people that are going to UFO conferences as people that might attend a Neil deGrasse Tyson talk. It's one of those that kind of carries over. It's just one of those mind expanding topics that hits both sides. But I think the idea of it being organic and not necessarily just this matrix one type, it's a computer program, there's a dude that programmed it, zeros and ones exactly in this way. The idea that it can be a simulation and not that is something I've never thought about before. And you have background in this, don't you? Right?
Yeah, I have a degree in simulation programming, right. Well, let's put this into a little bit of context here. Okay, so a lot of people right now believe it's a computer simulation, because that is the height of our technology right now. And then, of course, we had the pop culture sensation, The Matrix, basically tell us it's a computer simulation. That made a lot of sense to us because that's our culture right now. But let's back up a little bit. About 130 years ago, you had Nikola Tesla. And he had invented something that he called the telautomaton during the Spanish-American War. And basically, it was like the world's first drone, where basically it was a little submarine that could shoot torpedoes controlled by radio waves. And his vision for this, that he got laughed out for, was that these telautomatons would be able to analyze the situation, be able to move on its own based on the situation that it analyzed to, target a ship or what have you, and launch a torpedo at the right time. And then he even took it further and said, I even envision an automaton of myself that would look like me, act like me, would respond to stimuli just as I would be able to make decisions just as I would. He's talking about essentially drones, robotics, and artificial intelligence
Yeah.
130 years ago, right? Now, in his vision of that back then, it was, using gears, wheels, radio waves, that sort of thing. The silicon microchip had not been invented yet and would not be invented until after he died. So he had the ideas, he had the concept, but he didn't know the real technology behind it that would make those things happen. We have that today, right? Because we have drones, we have artificial intelligence, we have things that can do everything he talked about. So, when it comes to this idea of a simulated universe, yeah, we have the ideas, we have the concepts, but I don't think we fully understand what type of technology that would really take.
Yeah. You know what? That's a really, I did not know that about Tesla. I learn more and more each time. That's such an interesting take on that. You know what? I'm going to ask you a question, and maybe this might get the people mad out there, but I want to know because
Oh,
I want to know about Tesla. Tesla is beloved in the fringe or whatever this alternative community. We love Tesla. Everybody thinks Tesla's free energy, and all this stuff. And there's that quote he has about seeing the past, present, and future all at the same time. You mentioned frequencies and what the universe, the breakdown, his breakdown, or was that Einstein's or was that Tesla who broke down things in the
it was
frequency?
Einstein.
It
That
was
was one of
Einstein.
Einstein's. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
you're mixing two. So, Nikola Tesla had the everything coming down to frequency, resonance, vibration.
Okay.
Einstein had the quote about past, present, future just being an illusion.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. Some people, there is a quote about Tesla that people claim is basically and this is where I'm curious because look, I'll sit here and I will absolutely continue the search in the tradition of of what you're doing on your show and what they're doing on Coast to Coast. I will keep searching people that claim that they hung out with Trump's uncle and he has the paper of the time machine. I'll look for that.
Uh,
But no one's been able to produce anything to me, and I've looked around that suggests that Tesla actually was tinkering with devices to play with time. Have you come across anything like that? I mean, is it truly just wiped away from the cabinet of papers, or because he does talk about time, but again, it is more in the way you describe with the automatons and this
right.
theoretical sense. So I don't know if you've dug into that. I don't know if you care to dig into it, but what is your take on Tesla and playing with time in this mechanical engineering sense?
Yeah, I mean, he was really interested in energy and harnessing basically the power of the earth and sending signals through the earth and that sort of thing. In which he got a lot of those ideas from the ancients. He was a student of ancient Egypt, and I think where this, it's hard to know because there's what's called the Tesla cache, and this is like all the information, documents, machines, this sort of thing that these sorts of things that the government seized after he died. They basically raided his apartment and grabbed everything that they could. So there's a lot of things that could be that
Yeah.
he tinkered with and what have you. But um, from Tesla's youth, he claims to have astral projected. Back when he was in Serbia, this was something that his culture, the people that his his town, his family, these were things that they did that they tinkered with back then. So it could be a mixture of those sorts of things that he did in his youth with technology that he was trying to develop as an adult. It's kind of hard to know.
Interesting. No, I appreciate the honest answer. I mean, is there, I mean, there are other schools of thought. I mean, I've had people. Do you know the guy Steve Gibbs? Stephen Gibbs
No,
at
I'm
all?
not
Have you heard?
familiar. No.
Oh gosh, this guy. I mean, I think he passed away last year. I've had Augie Nost was on this show years ago, and he talked about how he used to have this time travel, this little device that was a combination. It used the mind. It was one of those, yeah, psychotronic devices that
Hmm.
if you got your astral projection in gear and you got this electricity in enough space, you could cause interesting things to happen. You could time slip, stuff like that. To me, I do believe that there is an interesting fusion of astral projection and machines. I don't know if I know your book is not necessarily like here's a machine and here's why time travel exists. But
Right.
is there? Let me ask you this. I'm curious from the people in your connected universe group, the connected universe portal, which we will link everybody to Mike's links. You can find it all at MikeRicksecker.com. That'll all be in the show notes. But has anyone come to you and said, hey, I've got a machine. I want you to see it. Or, hey, I can do this time travel thing. I've done it rather consistently. I'm curious about your in person experiences with those who may have claimed they have some mastery of time stack theory, or stack time theory, rather.
I haven't had anybody come forth saying I have a time machine and I've been able to use this machine to go back and forth between different times. I have had people on a more oh metaphysical level, say that they have contacted other moments in time, whether it's past or future, that sort of thing. So more on kind of like the psychic level and what have you. But yeah, nobody coming forth and saying that I've got a machine that's had me zip off to 2084 or something like that.
Yeah. Is that is super interesting. I mean, even the ability to travel in consciousness back and forth in that way. I mean, hey, look, there are people out there. There are people out there for all this stuff, and there are definitely people out there that are teaching others how to time travel astrally. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if you've dug
Well,
into
but
any of that at all.
you can also look at it from the point of you know time loss with UFO abductions and things of that nature. That in and of itself is, a little bit of a time travel experience because I think what's happening in those type of cases, if you have a extraterrestrial that's traveling interdimensionally, instead of using Newtonian physics to get here, which would take however many potentially thousands of years from wherever they may be coming from in the universe, um, that they may be traveling, using interdimensional means. And if that's the case, something that's like, fifth dimension or above our own would be able to see time as a physical representation. And so if they took somebody from here and took them on into their own dimension for a while. Well, time's going to work very, very differently in that case. So you hear, take Travis Walton, where he thought he was gone for like a couple hours and ended up being gone for 5 days. Is that what is happening there? And if so, that would be a type of time travel experience, which actually would be using a machine if they were, if he was really brought up onto a UFO.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the other thing that I think is interesting here, and um, I wonder about your take on places on Earth that people claim are portals or the ley lines theory. This idea. I
Hmm.
mean, I had a whole guy come on the show talking about his time in the military with time machine, all this stuff, and his entire thing was, yeah, the only way these machines work is if you find the right areas. They're ley lines. You actually have to get to these areas of high electromagnetic charge. I mean, look, I know that again, it's kind of one of those buzzwords. Electromagnetic energy can do everything in the world of the supernatural, the paranormal. But what is your take on that? Are there when it comes to time slips, um, I know there are a lot of stories about people going to areas. I mean, there is that what is it? There's like the somewhere in London under the tube where people tend to slip and see people in uniform, soldiers, stuff like that. And I'm going,
Right.
okay, is it the area? Is it them? How does stack time theory account for maybe those location specific instances?
Yeah, so the location specific, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with time or stack time theory. And a person, a human resonance is anywhere between 9 to 16 hertz. Everybody's a little bit different, so you do have to take into account the individual person themselves. But you do have these energetic locations on Earth. Ley line's kind of a I kind of joke around. It's kind of a layman's term for what's actually going on here, because the lay
Right.
is really just the lining up of all of these different what we would call sites of power. Whether it's Stonehenge, different temples, different cathedrals, things like that. All these ancient sites that seem to like line up in a perfect line. It's a geographic lining up of these different sites. What's the important part of all that is the telluric currents that are under the earth, which is the electromagnetic current that is natural to our planet. So the Earth's core is a molten spinning ball of iron, and that creates an electromagnetic field which extends out from the planet, and that protects us from the solar wind. Otherwise, we'd all get fried, and we wouldn't even be alive. So this is a good thing. However, as it passes through the Earth's mantle and crust, it interacts with different metals, minerals, pockets of water, these sorts of things. And depending on what it runs into along the way up, it does create different electromagnetic fields that are actually very measurable. My work with the Alaska Triangle, my book, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle, I came across a very, very interesting survey done by the U.S. Department of the Interior in 1965, in which they did an electromagnetic survey. And you can find these electromagnetic surveys through, the various decades and different locations and all that. But this particular example, they covered 100,000 square miles of Alaska. Alaska's huge; it's over 600,000 square miles, but they did 100,000 square miles, which is pretty admirable. And they classified the different areas. They called them five different magnetic characters. And within these magnetic characters, they also distinguish some negative anomalies. So yeah, they're very aware of these different pockets of electromagnetism in the area. Then you also have to take into consideration other factors like seismic activity that expels a specific energy. Volcanic activity also expels a certain amount of energy. And then we're talking about the protection by the Earth's magnetism. Well, it's a little bit thinner in the pole areas. So as those solar flares and what have you smack against the Earth, that's why the auroras are so vivid on the pole areas. And so, of course, this leads to the whole idea of the Alaska Triangle. What's charging that area is you have all these different energies that are interacting with each other. So yeah, there is something to be said for different energetic areas of the Earth. And going back to Tesla, this is something that he was interested in harnessing and utilizing to send energy across the planet. So it's definitely something that exists.
Yeah. Huh. Oh man, this definitely makes me, I mean, I'm putting on the conspiracy brain here. I'm going, okay, this makes it. This is why all these people are out there looking at these sites, protecting these areas. They're doing research. It must be that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, it's we'll never know. It's all so compartmentalized, but there must be something to people, starting to the fact that a U.S. base will be set up around an area that's high electromagnetic frequency, and we don't quite know what's going on there. I don't know. Is that too
Well, that's why I
conspiratorial of
believe
me?
HARP was built in Alaska.
Right? Exactly. 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 Yeah. And I don't know what's going on in Montauk. I mean, you ever explore that at all, or?
A little bit. I mean, they didn't play really into this particular work, but yeah, back in the day, I looked into that a little bit. Sure.
Yeah, it's that gets a little. I mean, that gets bizarre in so many different ways. But hey, look. I mean, let me ask you this: does the Philadelphia experiment make sense in light of this theory?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been getting asked that a lot ever since this book came out, and yeah,
I'm so sorry.
because yeah, I know it's fine. Because so many of the stories are anecdotal, and there's really, trying to find proof on it is very, very elusive. Um, I didn't really go there, but it's something that if that really happened, if that really occurred, would this play into that? Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even uh, the idea of the way sound is connected to time is something that you mentioned earlier about frequencies and whatnot.
Hmm.
I mean, again, it might just be it might not be real, but even the story of the so-called chronovisor in the Vatican was supposedly because of Gregorian chanting, and they were playing with electromagnetic energy, and then they heard the sound first. I mean, even if that story is made up, it's interesting that hearing old Gregorian chants was the way to get to time travel, hearing an old sound. I mean, in general of these accounts, because you mentioned a lot of seeing entities,
Sure.
but is there, we all know that there are radio waves out there. We know that the broadcasts from all of time are playing out there. I mean, would you say that there's a lot of auditory incidents as well, more or less? I mean, how does that fit into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's another type of waveform. So, you just need a receiver to be able to hear it properly. And so, yeah, those waves are out there for us to hear as well. And yeah, like when it comes to sound, okay, again, it's another type of wave. It's a type of vibration. That's what everything comes down to. How is it vibrating? And this most recent season of Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch, with all the things they've been doing with all the gadgets and technology and shooting rockets up into this thing and all that stuff. Uh, the the incident that I really liked, the test that they did that I thought was really really interesting was they got a tribe of indigenous drummers, and they're sitting around in a drum circle, and they're doing their thing, they're doing their drumming, which of course creates a certain sound wave. You get the the vibration going from the drumming, all of that. And right up there on top of the mesa, they have, their different devices to scan the area. One of them was just the flare camera. It's looking for hot and cold spots, that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, at the top of the mesa, where there is a stone circle, that area, the stone circle, basically, a heat signature starts to arise from it, which makes, complete sense, because here you have this, this vibration from the drumming that is activating the circle that's up there. These circles were constructed in such a way to be able to utilize a variety of different waves and energies, and sound is one of them. I was out in Ireland a little over a year ago, and I was standing in the middle of Drombeg Stone Circle. It's a smaller circle. Some of the stones are missing and that sort of thing, but just standing directly in the middle, if you just try to talk, it's almost like you're in a little bubble. It's really fascinating. You can actually audibly hear that there's something unusual about this area. And basically, it has to do with the fact that my voice is resonating off of the stones that are there. It's a sound phenomena. Now, just that little bit, just me talking regular and being able to experience that. Okay, now imagine this structure a couple thousand years ago when it was first created, and the stones are in their full glory. They're not weathered down. All of them were there. There's only 13 stones there now. They believe there were 17 before. I could not imagine what that would have sounded like, and what that would have been like, and how that would have felt. To stand in the middle of that and be doing that chanting, right in the middle there. I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. Just so just based on that, so yeah, they were definitely using sound for a variety of different purposes, whether it could have been for healing purposes, certainly ceremonial. There's a ceremony that they were doing there, obviously, um, to enter into altered states of consciousness, rather than using like a hallucinatory drug. You could certainly use sound vibration to do that. And then we could take it to the next level. Were they using that to enter into some sort of portal to go somewhere?
Yes, let's hope they are. I hope I really I mean it seems like a lot of people point in that direction. And by the way, everybody, I mean, look, this is a very well reviewed book here. Check out Travels Through Time Inside the Fourth Dimension, Time Travel and Stacked Time Theory by Mike Ricksecker. I mean, this is where you get all this stuff. And even you know what? I'm happy that it's 320 page or 322 pages in print. I mean, come on, who's writing this much these days? Most people that come on, they write their like 80-page thesis. I mean, you put the well, you put a lot into this, which I appreciate. My question for you is, what do you think have been some of the biggest takeaways? I mean, I imagine that there are a lot of people who have read various books on time over the years. There's Stephen Hawking fans and Brian Greene and all these physicists, and then, the alternative theorists and whatnot. Have you been hearing a lot about, is there anything in particular that you keep hearing from people that have read the book that you're going like, wow, I didn't even realize people were going to enjoy this piece of it this much? I mean, what are some of the big takeaways?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of philosophy in the book, and people have really appreciated that. They really appreciate the pop culture references. They like the mix, is what it is. There's a lot of science in it without being too sciencey. There's a lot of metaphysics in it without being too metaphysical. And then you have a variety of anecdotal stories and pop culture references to kind of really bring it together and make it in a lot of areas a fun read. So yeah, it's been a good mix, I think, is what it is.
Yeah, I'm glad it's going so well for you. And yeah, we're definitely going to link to that. Before we go, I need to know what is going on with this Mandela effect. I mean, is it just misremembering? Is it? That's what everybody says, I know. But I guess I'm wondering, why, even if this stacked time theory holds up, why is it that you can slip into another reality where, the tail is suddenly missing from Curious George? I mean, why is that a priority in this universe? Yeah. Do you have any clarity on that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of them are you're misremembering something. Some of them, maybe not. And I do include a rather extensive story on the Mandela effect in my life. And it's not anything that you would find if you were to Google top 50 cases of the Mandela effect. You would not find it on any of those lists. Um, I mean, here's what it is, some of these cases that we are, calling the Mandela effect are the result of some sort of meddling that's happened back in time. Now, nobody's going back in time to change the spelling of Oscar Mayer or Fruit Loops or anything like that. I mean, that's so trivial. Nobody's doing that. But some of these cases of what may be a legitimate Mandela effect, somebody has gone back in time. There's been some sort of time travel incident, and something's changed along the way that over the course of time resulted in this little change over here and that little change over there, essentially the butterfly effect. um, and so some people are remembering that previous version of our reality, and then you get some of these paradoxical events as well, that just you kind of leave you scratching your head, and how in the world is that possible? And that's the result of some of these time travel incidents. But yeah, nobody's going back purposefully to change branding. Yeah, that's just too trivial.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, you've got so much out there. Obviously, I think people should pick up this book, as well as you've got. Oh my gosh, I mean, you can learn a lot at MikeRicksecker.com, as well as you've got the Connected Universe Portal.com. You mentioned before we started, you're doing there's a new presentation coming out soon. What can we expect from you in the future?
Yeah, so a number of different things, but the end of this month, and by the time this podcast is released, I'll have the official dates, times, all of that released. But basically, I'm doing a special presentation of Travels Through Time. So I've had a couple of speaking engagements here over the last few weeks, and one was up in Michigan, Sault Ste. Marie. That was Michigan Paracon. I had a Phenomicon out in Vernal, Utah, but not everybody's able to get out to those. So I'm going to do a special presentation of my Travels Through Time on a special, we're going to do like a special webinar for that. And so that'll be the end of September here. I also have a Connecting the Universe event, which is a 4-part presentation. I'm doing that at the Oliver House on December 2nd. That's in Middleborough, Massachusetts. I have a Phoenix MUFON presentation I'm doing December 9th, and then Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. That is February 9th through the 11th.
Wow, that is super cool. I definitely hope to get to one of those at least. I'm now wondering what happens when they put you on a panel with, Marshall Barnes and Andy Bishago, the time travel from Project Pegasus, and Montauk people. I mean, do you do that panel? Have you been asked to? I mean, what happened? Are they looping you in? Are they pegging you as the time travel guy? I mean, what's happening for you?
Yeah, I haven't been on panels like that yet. That would be interesting for sure. We'll see how that might pan out in the future here. Those would be some interesting conversations.
Yeah, I'd love. Maybe I'll facilitate that one day. I don't know. I would love to do it. Yes, but no, this is so interesting. We didn't even talk about all the other paranormal stuff in your life. So maybe in the future we could, because I definitely want to get into the shadow people more. I'm fascinated by that. I know you have a book on that as well, which you can find everything at the links in the show notes. Or if you see the name of this guy, just put the first and last name together, MikeRicksecker.com, and it's all there. Mike, thank you for doing the research. Thank you for giving so much of your time, your energy, and your knowledge. This is you definitely opened up a lot of portals in my head, which is, again, all I ever ask for. This has been a very interesting conversation. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Greg. This was definitely a great conversation, and I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Likewise. Mike Ricksecker. Thanks so much for coming on. And did you enjoy that podcast? Did you appreciate that I did everything humanly possible to avoid making a reference to a Flux Capacitor or Michael J. Fox? And instead I landed on titling this something about timeshares and calling out Indiana Jones 5. I'll do better next time. I want to thank Ronnie McGilvery for the theme music. I want to thank Zero Boy for the pre-theme music. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to follow it and rate the show and leave a review. Any of your words help. I thank you so much. Talk soon.